Welcome to Access TV's Unlock the Minds podcast. Join us as we unlock the minds of industry-leading innovators, visionaries, and pioneers.
Today, I am humbled to be sitting down with one of the world's most talented and intellectual thought leaders who has been praised as an international best-selling author and referenced by some of today's most powerful icons, including Drake, 50 Cent, Jay-Z, Kanye West, and beyond. From the hip-hop community to Hollywood and the rest of the world, Robert Greene has become a luminary through his wide range of dynamic storytelling in his books that are meant to influence, challenge, and shift one's perceptions of human nature. And he achieves this seamlessly, though it is no easy task, through his timeless works, including the 48 Laws of Power, the Laws of Human Nature, Mastery, the 50th Law, and more. In this episode, we unlock Robert's mind in a way it hasn't been before. With that said, please enjoy this special episode and conversation with the one and only Robert Greene. Robert, welcome to the show. I greatly appreciate your time, and it's truly an honor to have you join us.
Well, thank you for having me, Oliver. It's my pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. I have to say that when I first came across your works years and years ago, I believe each one of your books speak for themselves, and I encourage everyone listening to dive into your timeless pieces of work to truly unlock their minds. However, I think today we're here to unlock your mind in a different way than it has been before. Although it's delineated in your books in a more generalized manner, why do you personally feel celebrities and big names are magnetized to you?
Well, I'm not, I'm more interested in everyday people who come to my books. I'm not someone who's particularly interested in celebrities. I mean, rappers I understand because those are sort of the ones that I've associated with the most, 50 Cent and Drake and others, mostly because my book, particularly the 48 Laws of Power, was very helpful for them navigating the extremely Machiavellian world of the music industry. And so they found, like 50 told me, nothing he experienced on the streets of Southside Queens prepared him for all the sharks in the record labels and all that he went through. But the 48 Laws of Power really made it clear to him the kind of manipulation and power games that were very prevalent in the music business. And so other rappers like Drake and Ludacris, et cetera, have sort of told me the same thing. So I understand why they were interested in the book. And then since the book came out, 48 Laws, I've done a lot of consulting with people who are very powerful in business, in politics, et cetera, mostly because these are people who are navigating worlds that are very political, and they understand the technical side of their business, whatever that might be, but they have a hard time understanding people and human nature and psychology. And they're dealing with surprises, unexpected behavior, and they think maybe Robert can help me in that. So it's not that my personality or anything about me is particularly alluring to celebrities. It's mostly that they found my books extremely helpful, and they think that maybe I could help them some more. But honestly, I get more pleasure when I get feedback from everyday readers, or I talk to Uber drivers, et cetera, who have stories to tell about the books helping them, because I'm very empathetic to the underdogs in the world who don't really understand the power game, and my book has helped them a lot.
Absolutely, and I think that's an amazing opener because a lot of people in this world per se, and I think a lot of your readers are people who not only want to, enhance and change their lives and improve them, but, even with my experiences of reading your books, there's a sense of effort on our part to get the most out of the books each and every time we read them. Whether it's from the 50th Law to Mastery to the 48 Laws of Power, I continue to feel that there's so much value to be extracted from your principles, and that really no one can achieve that at such a high level except you. So I commend you for that.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I want to segue into a question I strongly feel follows what you just mentioned, which is how you urge readers to challenge their presupposed notions of what it means to live morally. Out of the three, power, seduction, and mastery, which is the most fundamental for people to master in order to be successful?
Well, it depends on where they are, how old they are, and actually the nature of the career that they're in. So if they're in a law firm, for instance, and they're trying to become a partner and it's very political and difficult and they're dealing with people that they can't necessarily trust, I would naturally recommend the 48 Laws of Power or perhaps the 33 Strategies of War. But if you're 21 years old, you just graduated college, and you have like debt and you're not sure what the next step is, and you're a little bit confused about your path in life, definitely Mastery would be the book for you. Um, and in general, in any kind of career, I think, as I try to make the point, even in all of my books, there's two sides to success or power in the world. There's the technical aspect of being brilliant with whatever it is. For a writer, it's being able to write. For a business person, it's understanding how to run a business, how to make a profit, how to manage people there. So there's the technical side, but there's also the social side, and that's understanding people. And a lot of people out there, they think that they can get by just being very technically brilliant in their field, having a lot of knowledge and information at their fingertips. But dealing with people is the hardest thing of all. People are very difficult. There's no real algorithm out there that can help you solve the puzzle of people's behavior. They're unpredictable. They don't tell you what they're really thinking. They say they love your ideas, etc., but they're thinking something else. And so that kind of trickiness is something that I think Human Nature, my last book, would be very helpful. So, people ask me that question all the time, and I say, tell me a little bit more about where you are. And in general, I think anybody under the age of 22, I would definitely recommend Mastery first. And anybody, dealing with power games and power situations or difficult people, I would then say the 48 Laws of Power or Laws of Human Nature.
Absolutely. I can't agree more. What would be some of the tenets you would put out there for listeners aged between 20 and 40 in the prime time of their lives?
Well, there are two kinds of people in the world, and there's sort of shades or nuances between these two types. But either there's the type of person who needs security, values security most of all, and they feel most comfortable that there's a paycheck coming every month, and they don't deal very well with uncertainty. And so they tend to go into fields where they can have job security, that's their main thing, and work for perhaps a large company. And then there are more the entrepreneurial types in this world. I would have to classify myself in that group. Before I worked as a writer, I had 50, 60 different jobs, never for more than, I don't think ever more than 10 months. I hated working for other people. I hated all the stupid political games, all the crap I had to deal with. I liked having control over what I do and what I think and what I produce. So I'm not downplaying people who want security. I understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just my point is you have to know your nature. You have to know who you are. And that's a big point in the Mastery book, the first chapter. Discover your life's task. Discover what you were meant to accomplish in life, what your personality type is. So if you look back and you definitely say to yourself, damn, I really, really hate working for other people. I hate all the crap bullshit I have to deal with when I'm working for a large company. Then you must be honest with yourself and say, working for this company that I am right now, it's not suited to me. I have more of an entrepreneurial mindset. So you have to find a career path that suits you, suits your inclinations, suits what you love, and suits, what you're naturally drawn to. I make a very big point of that because most of the unhappiness that people suffer in this life comes from, work is an extremely important part of who we are and how we feel about ourselves. And choosing the wrong career, choosing something just because it's lucrative, but doesn't fulfill you in any way is setting you up for all sorts of problems when you get into your 30s and 40s and you suddenly reach like a midlife crisis and you don't know what you're doing. And then you turn to alcohol or drugs or all kinds of addictive behavior, but you never really understand the root of it is that you didn't understand yourself and you chose the wrong career path. So that's the most important thing by far. And the second thing I have to tell people is that you need to be fluid and you need to be adaptable. That's like all of my books are trying to emphasize that. The last law in the 48 laws is assume formlessness. It's knowing how to flow, how to be formless like water. The 33 Strategies of War is a major theme in that. It's also in the 50 Cent book. So the world is changing extremely fast. And if you went to business school and you got an MBA, for instance, you're filled with all of these ideas and conceptions of what the business world is like. And that's going to be too slow because in 2 years, everything will have changed. Particularly now, look at what's going on in our world with the coronavirus. This is known in economics as creative destruction. Capitalism goes through these periods that are very rough. Not often, something with the pandemic obviously is accelerating it, where all kinds of industries get destroyed, rooted out because of new advances in technology. And so you have to think ahead. You have to say, is there a future in what I am doing? Or am I tied to an industry that's going to be, a dinosaur in 5 years? You have to understand the trends that are going on in this world. I have a chapter in Laws of Human Nature about the generational phenomenon and how to be someone who's an incredibly astute reader of the zeitgeist, knowing not what's going on right now, but knowing where the world will be in 2 years. And that's sort of, to me, a key component for anyone who's successful or who's a leader is being able to adapt to changing circumstances. So those would be the 2 points that I think are absolutely critical. Knowing who you are, finding the appropriate career path, and being extremely flexible, particularly in these fast changing times. I mean, there are other principles, but those would be the 2 most important right now.
I'm so interconnected with what you just said there, as it really spoke to who I am and how I operate.
Yeah.
Specifically, one element being adaptability and the strength that lies in being able to adapt to situations that life presents while being fluid.
Yeah.
With that said, the other pillar that I wanted to bring to surface was the notion of being irreplaceable. Specifically, from your perspective, how can people develop themselves to be irreplaceable in the business world? In your opinion, and what I agree with is that it's the ultimate position of power. You argue that it's not only essential to understand your motivations, but those of your associates around you to function more effectively. The game is a social game, and the winners in life have a wider base of operation, more supporters and more allies than other people. And you argue that, you're not going to get very far if you're alienating everyone around you. So if you could please expand on that.
Well, I have a law in the 48 Laws of Power, which I think is extremely important for people out there. It's called Learn to Keep People Dependent on You. And the idea is people are not going to hold on to you at a job or be a client of yours because they love you, because they like you, because they think you're a really wonderful person, which is a mistake a lot of people make. They're going to hold on to you. They're going to keep you employed. They're going to stay your customer because they need you. They're dependent on you. And if you disappear, if you're not there, they're in a lot of trouble, right? So you're irreplaceable. That's the ultimate position of power, that people cannot get rid of you. If they fire you from your job, whoa, there's going to be hell to pay for, because you are so adept and so competent and you have your hands in all different aspects of the business that it's going to be bloody if they try and get rid of you. Well, that's a true position of power. Now, of course, the game is, how do you get to that point? And the thing that I would emphasize the most, and is a major theme in all of my books, is being one of a kind. So if you have a skill, if you have a personality type, and there are 50 other people out there in the marketplace that are at hand, well, damn it, in 1 year, they're going to replace you with someone who's younger and cheaper, because you're just one of a type that they can find out there. But if you're unique, if you bring your own spirit to it, if you have a kind of a creative mind that can't be replaced, that is totally who you are, then that makes it very, very difficult to find someone else to replace you. Now, if I look out at if we expand our scope here and look out in a wider sense, and I look at the major, most successful entrepreneurs in the world, or people successful in any venture, I can honestly say that there is nobody else out there like them. There's nobody like a 50 Cent. There's nobody like an Elon Musk. There's nobody like the late Steve Jobs. These are people who are one of a kind. They were not afraid to be unique. They were not afraid to bring their own strange, weird spirit into play in the marketplace. And a problem a lot of people have is they're timid. They're afraid of standing out. They're afraid of being different. They think the success lies in just fitting into the group and just being like everyone else. And there is a role to be played there. If you stand out, if you stick out too much, particularly if you're just starting out, you probably will get fired. You have to follow a company ethos and a company spirit. But as you climb the ladder, as you become more powerful, you have to let go of that and you have to bring out your own unique spirit, what makes you completely different. Your business has to be something that no one had thought of before, that is different from anything else out there, so that you can't be cannibalized by something else out there in the business world. And you yourself have to have a spirit that is truly, truly your own, and you can't be afraid of that. And too many people, I know for myself, I had a turning point in writing my books. I consider myself kind of a strange character, what we would call a rara avis, a rare bird. You know, I'm different. I don't deny that. And in writing my first book, I brought all of my weirdness. I'm talking about the 48 Laws. I brought all of my weirdness to bear. In other words, you might not like my book, but you'll say there's nothing else out there like it. And I mean the structure of it, with the stories, the interpretation. I mean the images. I mean the things on the margins, on the side. And at one point, the publisher was saying, you know, Robert, I think this book might be a little too strange for our readers. And they wanted me to alter it in a way that would make it more like other books. In other words, get rid of that stuff on the side, get rid of all those images and quotes, etc. And I said no. I mean, it was a very difficult decision because maybe they would cancel the book. I said, look, it's either the way I laid out the book and planned it and wrote it, or I'll go somewhere else with this. And it worked. You know, they backed off. But each one of my books, I try and do the same thing. I'm not going to copy myself and what I did in the past. I'm not going to copy other people. I'm not going to try and be like another Malcolm Gladwell. I'm just who I am, and I'm not afraid of it. So if you stand out that way, if you make yourself one of a kind, you will be truly irreplaceable.
That's priceless. Thank you. Given our positioning in Los Angeles, and I'm just choosing LA as an easy example, say that we're living in such a city and time where people would rather just be comfortable than innovate. I think the level of comfortableness in people these days is really dragging them down unconsciously. And everything that you've mentioned in terms of adaptability and moving forward, it's almost like they don't have any motivation to do that.
Right.
And for the people listening who can relate to this, they may ask, how can I get over that hump? They want to be different and change, but it's almost an artificial force and not natural for them. Some may say, like yourself, that people have masks on that conceal their true selves.
Well, there's a very important element here. Now, I understand with the crisis that we're all going through and the nature of how many people are losing their jobs. I'm not insensitive to that. I feel tremendous amount of empathy for what people are going through. And when times are very uncertain and we have a lot of fear, it's very difficult to preach what I'm preaching, but there's a reason why I'm doing it. And the reason is that if you're locked in the moment, if you can't think ahead, if you're locked and you're panicking about your career and where it's going to be in 3 months, you're going to be in a position when the virus passes, whenever that is, where you're going to immediately latch onto a job that will give you help you pay the rent. And I understand all that. You need to do that. We went through it in 2008, but you're going to latch on to something immediate. And what you're going to do is you're going to find yourself in a treadmill where you can't get out of this, where you're constantly reacting, and you'll take some job that pays your bills, but that job will disappear in 6 months, and then you're back where you are, scrambling for another one that will help pay the bills, that will get you past 1 year of time, et cetera, et cetera. And you're always reacting to what's going on in the world, and it creates a tremendous amount of anxiety and depression that you're not even aware of, leading to all kinds of disorders. And so ultimately, what you want to do is think ahead. You want to think ahead 2 years, 3 years down the line and have a plan. So maybe now in the next 3 months, you are grabbing for a job to pay the bills, but you're also in your spare time, which we all have a lot of now, you're taking a journal and you're writing, you're going through a process that I outlined in Mastery and I talked about earlier, where you're saying, what is it that I was meant to do? What is it that will give me ultimate satisfaction in life? What is the career path that is definitely suited for me? And also, what is happening in the world? What is some kind of business or industry that has a future? Not being a barista at Starbucks might be great for a few months, but there's no real future in that. So while you're freaking out now, you're also thinking about, you have a plan, and every night you write down in your journal, these are my thoughts, these are my ideas, this is where I think I need to go, these are the things that I don't like, these are the career paths that don't suit me, etc. And then once you decide, maybe this is where I should head, then you have a goal. And to reach that goal, you're going to have to maybe learn some new skills. You're going to have to maybe learn some things on the internet or take some classes online or whatever. And in going through that process, suddenly the freaking out, the panic feeling that you have now will start to dissipate as you go, no, I have a longer term vision of my life. And how that connects back to being more of yourself is, in doing that, that's what I'm telling you. You will naturally fall into what I'm saying if you start connecting to who you are and what you were meant to do. You will start naturally thinking of a business plan, of a career path, of somewhere to go that suits you as an individual. And you have to be practical in this life, I understand. But in following this path, in trying to carve out and not be so afraid of being different, and starting a business that kind of reflects your own interests, you will ultimately have much more success than trying to be a cookie cutter out there, trying to do what other people are doing. So there's a practical element to this. But the main thing is to get out of the trap of constantly reacting and constantly choosing jobs and careers that give you like immediate comfort, but don't satisfy you in a deep sense. And I'm not saying that in some kind of new agey kind of way. It's like, if you reach the age of 35 and you haven't really hit upon something that suits you in some way, and you're feeling frustrated and uncreative and depressed, you are going to end up in a dead end in a few years. And you're going to end up where you'd have no idea where you're going to go. And that's going to be a lot worse for you than if you follow the path that I'm telling you about, more or less.
In an effort to innovate and keep the world moving forward, can you give people an idea with a practical piece of advice of how to turn their inner switch on?
Well, it's a very good question. Everyone is different. I talk about this in Mastery in that first chapter again. Some people it's very clear to. Albert Einstein, when he was 4 years old, was given a compass for his birthday by his father, and he instantly knew that he was obsessed with forces that are unseen. What is this magnetic force in the universe that is moving the compass point? And then from then on, it was kind of an obsession of his that led to his obsession with physics and certain problems in physics. I could talk about Steve Jobs seeing electronics in a store window at the age of 6 in Sunnyvale and having the same thing. I could talk about Tiger Woods seeing his father when he was 2 years old hitting golf balls in the garage and going absolutely bananas. I've got to do the same thing. Some people, it's very, very clear at an early age and they follow it. But for a lot of people, it's not clear. It is, as you say, it's kind of hidden, and they have to discover it. And the problem is that when you're young, when you're 3 or 4, you're 5 years old, you have a kind of an intuition about what you love, what you excites you, what makes you laugh, what makes your eyes open wide open, what you want to do. The problem is, as you get older, is you start listening to your parents telling you, oh, you need to go to law, oh, you need to become a doctor. You start listening to your friends who are saying, oh, this is a cool career to be. You start listening to your teachers who are telling you, this is what you're good at, this is what you're bad at, this is what you need to do, blah, 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 blah. By the time you're 18 years old, that little voice that you had when you were 4 or 5 that said, I want to hit golf balls, I want to design gadgets, I want to be interested in gravity or whatever, is gone. You can't hear it anymore. It's been layered over by the voices of parents, teachers, friends, and the culture at large, and you lose touch with who you are. And so I get this question all the time from people. They say, Robert, it's a very interesting idea, but I really honestly have no sense of what it is for me, what my life's task is. I can't remember my childhood. I'm interested in several things. I don't know what it is. Can you help me? And there's no instant answer. I can't snap my fingers and there's no app or drug you can take or anything that will give you the answer. It's a process. You have to be willing to go through the process. And the process involves looking at yourself and looking at what you love and what you hate and the things that you are drawn to and the things that you're not drawn to. Because the problem you face in life is everybody has the potential for being creative in some way. I honestly believe that. But you're not going to be creative, you're not going to be productive if you don't love what you're doing. Because the mind works in a certain way. When you're extremely interested in something, you absorb, you pay deeper attention, and you learn more quickly. I remember when I was in college, I studied French for several years, and it was kind of boring, and I liked it, but it wasn't that engaging. And then I went to France, and I realized, God damn, I can't even speak a word of this. And then I met a French girl that I wanted to have a relationship with, and suddenly I was so motivated to learn French that in 3 weeks I learned more than I had ever learned in 4 years of university French classes, because I was extremely motivated. I had to learn. I really wanted to. That's how the mind works. So if you choose a career that kind of, it's sort of interesting, it's not that interesting, your mind will tune out. You'll be bored. You won't have the energy. You won't be as creative as you could be. So you need to discover what it is that excites you, even now when you're 20 or 30 or even 40 years old. I know, for instance, I've been pretty clear since I was young about the fact that I love words and language and books, and then it kind of led to writing. But I also have been always extremely fascinated by ancient cultures, by our prehistoric ancestors. Ever since I was 6 years old, something that fascinates me. And so if I'm reading the newspaper, the New York Times, for instance, and I see an article about some new discovery about our earliest ancestors, my eyes are wide. I have to read that article. I have to bookmark it. I get so excited. And that is clearly reflected in all of my books, particularly Mastering the Laws of Human Nature, where you can see that great interest of mine. Well, what are those subjects for you? What are those things that you see online or in a paper or wherever? Go, wow, I got to learn more. I'm really interested in that. That's really exciting. It brings out the 4-year-old in you, So it's there. It's just buried underneath all the other voices that you've been listening to. You've got to shut those voices out because they're going to destroy you in the end. They're going to make you miserable. They're going to make you follow a path that other people think is for you but isn't actually suited to you.
In today's culture, do you see a lot of people who go about in life doing things robotically? And if these people were to be filtered out, per se, for not fulfilling their true purpose, do you think there would be a shift in society and human behavior? I think we can both agree that passion is not the only ingredient for success.
Well, look, I'm a practical person, so it's not just simply following your passion. I understand you have to make money, and you have to feel a degree of security And you have to feel like, in 1 year I'm going to be able to pay my rent, etc. There are practical considerations here. And so you may love music, but you can't necessarily suddenly become a rock star. But there's something else in music that interests you, where you can find a different path in it, maybe more on the business side. So it's not exactly 100% exactly what you love, but it's at least 80% or 70%, as opposed to 0.001% if you're working at Starbucks. So it's got to be closer. So you've got to move closer to that ideal. But your question is, if more people were like this, if more people followed the spirit that I'm talking about, what would happen? Well, if we look at all of the great cultural moments in history in which we admire, which we consider golden ages, I could talk about Athens in the 5th century. I could obviously talk about the Renaissance in the 15th century that produced Leonardo da Vinci, etc. I could talk about the 1920s in the United States and in Europe that produced all these great writers and jazz, etc. I could even talk, some people might disagree, but the 1960s that kind of created a cultural revolution in some ways in the West, for instance. And when we look at these periods, we see an incredible amount of individual spirit, of a blossoming of all sorts of creative ideas, of unique personalities, of people who are following what we're talking about here. You have a group of writers who are all distinct, who are all very exciting. It creates a momentum where people become inspired to be more different, to be unique, to be more who they are. They see icons out there who are expressing themselves, and they see that there's a kind of a cultural momentum going on, and people want to join this. So, that would be that would be my ideal, that would be my dream, with all of the information that I'm talking about, millennials and Generation Z, whom I'm trying to place a lot of hope on. That look at all the information at your fingertips. Look at all the things you can learn about, all the skills you can get, something I couldn't dream of when I was in the university in the 1970s. And yes, I am that old. Um, I couldn't even dream of. You have all of these possibilities. And what if, people in Generation Z just decided to throw open the doors and get rid of all of the baggage from their parents, from the boomers, from Generation X and all the other stuff, and say, man, we're just going to express ourselves. We're going to just open up a period like that. We're going to create businesses. We're going to create art forms, etc., that reflect us. We're going to change this political system to make it something that suits us better. That, to me, would be an ideal world. We would create another golden age in our culture. So that's what would happen if more and more people follow that, as opposed to what you see in totalitarian states, as opposed to what you saw in Soviet Russia, communist Russia, or even perhaps today in China to some degree, where people are deadly, deadly afraid of sticking out. And there's no creative spirit, there's no elan, there's nothing new or vibrant. It's just about copying what other people are doing. There's a kind of deadness. So that always has been my ideal.
Sure. And I want to zoom in on a question that I personally would love to hear, and I think that a lot of your readers and advocates would love to hear based upon what you just mentioned is, how do you think, your material on human nature is going to change the world? It already has, but, how do you think it's going to change the world once your audience continues to adopt and is cognizant of how we evolve rationally, biologically, genetically and socially, in a 2025 or 2030 world? Do you envision a shift in people's human behavior and self-awareness?
Well, I'm not Nostradamus. I'm very wary of making predictions because so many of my predictions, like in 2007 or 8, were woefully wrong, and I'm willing to admit it, that I have my limits as well. But I wrote The Laws of Human Nature with a very simple purpose, which was everybody, particularly those who are listening to this, they are interested in the self-help genre. They're interested in changing themselves, in improving themselves. They don't 100% like what they see when they look in the mirror. They feel like they could improve, they could get better in their career, they could get better in their interpersonal relationships, how they relate to people. And so they read these books. But the problem is, and I read these books, the problem is they don't change you. They don't change you fundamentally deep down. It's just kind of surface information that goes in one ear and out the other. And so my goal when I wrote that book was, what will really, 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 really change people? And so I write a book to kind of immerse you in a different way of thinking, a different way of looking at the world, so that my thoughts infiltrate your thoughts and they become yours. And the idea in that book is you can't begin to change yourself unless you're honest with yourself, unless you realize that you have certain flaws, certain limitations, that you have problems, that you're short-sighted, that you can be irrational, that you're a bit self-absorbed and narcissistic, that you are prone to feeling envy, that you tend to listen to what other people are doing and you have a conformist streak, etc., etc. And with that honesty, which is what I'm promulgating in the book, you can now begin to go, maybe now in what I'm dealing with this particular situation, maybe I can change. Maybe I could be less narcissistic. Maybe I could step back instead of getting emotional. I could think about my emotions and start to become a bit rational. So I designed the book to be painful because I'm a heavy believer in pain. I think people are too soft right now. I'm sorry to say that. People are always looking for the easy way out. They want something quick and simple and easy. They want mastery in 2 hours in a book that'll teach them how to be a master. They want to understand people with some kind of shortcut. And I'm saying there are no shortcuts in life. You have to go through a process. You have to be disciplined. Mastering a subject requires a lot of tedium. And the same with wanting to change yourself. You are a flawed individual. You have certain tendencies and problems that are holding you back in life. I'm going to slap you on the face. I'm going to pour a bucket of extremely cold water on your head to make you realize that you have these problems. And believe me, I'm not exempting myself. In writing the book, I realized that, yes, I am Robert Greene. I am a narcissist. I can be very irrational. I can be short-sighted, etc., etc. So the goal was individuals can change when they become honest with themselves, and people and groups and a culture can change when they own up to who they are. When we own up to the fact that we are a species that is very aggressive and destructive, and that we're in the process of completely destroying our environment with all the terrible, terrible consequences that will bring. So you can't begin to alter yourself until you have honest. And that is the point of my books. I can't be grandiose enough to think that I alone will create some kind of revolution. But I think readers who've read it are coming to me in quite a large numbers and saying, man, that book was painful, but it's really helped me. It's really made me much more self-aware. And then I go, well, great. That's really wonderful because that was exactly the goal I had in mind in writing the book.
What you said really resonates with my experiences in reading the books, because once I dove in, I felt like I got slapped in the face multiple times with a number of the principles you shared. And it made me really think and reread portions several times to truly extract your message. Personally, what continues to attract me to your works is my alignment with your message in seeking the hard way out. I used to not be like this, but in recent years, it's really driven me to higher levels in my development without even realizing it. So with that, I really have to thank you for being a part of my journey leading up to us finally connecting.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. That means my goals were successful, and that's music to my ears, Oliver, so thank you.
Of course. And while we have you, I wanted to pick your brain on a few things I and many others would love to hear your perspective on. I know a number of the themes and principles you lay out are regarding the laws of human nature and us going internally to deconstruct ourselves and find answers. And a lot of people that look up to you in the self-help genre are specifically looking to achieve this. However, as technology continues to develop, what are your thoughts on artificial intelligence? And do you think it can adapt to, take part in, or perhaps even replace human thinking?
Well, I'm not an expert on it. I know that For instance, for mastery, I interviewed several people I considered contemporary masters, and one of them was Paul Graham, who's an extremely successful entrepreneur in the tech world. He, in the 90s, developed sort of the first online shopping platform that eventually was sold to Netscape, or Yahoo, I believe. I'm sorry. And then he went on to create a company called Y Combinator. Anyway, Paul Graham was a kind of a computer whiz in the 70s, well before any of us even knew what computers were or were even born. And he was a hacker. And then he got very interested in AI. He thought that was the new frontier. When I'm talking about the early 80s here. And then he got very disillusioned. And he basically came to the conclusion that AI is a bit of a dead end. It's very alluring. It seems like it could have this incredible potential. But he began to sense that actually it was a bit of an illusion. And I'm not exactly 100% sure what he meant. But what I think he's getting at, something I firmly believe in, is that there is nothing in the whole universe that is as interesting and complex as the human brain. The statistics on this are absolutely mind-blowing. The number of neurons and potential neuronal connections in the brain, there are more of them than all of the possible stars in the universe. I mean, on and on and on, all kinds of mind-numbing numbers about how insanely complex the human brain is. And the number of new connections and creative ways we can make those neuronal connections in the brain through thinking, through reading, through writing books, etc. And so that kind of part that I call mastery, where you have an intuitive feel, where you reach such a level where you're like Bobby Fischer in chess, where you have the whole chessboard internalized at your fingertips and you can come up with moves that no one can think of. Yes, a computer can mimic that process to some degree, but I don't think any kind of AI can ever reach the kind of level of complexity of thought of an Albert Einstein or of a Leonardo da Vinci. I don't think that can be replicated because it's more than just algorithms. It's more than just numbers. There's something almost, I hate to say it, almost sort of mystical about the process, where you reach a level where ideas come to you, you have no idea where they're coming from. I mean, what form of AI will be able to write a great novel or create a great book or I know there are people who have tremendous faith in it and that it will run all of our systems in the future and all of that. But I find that a bit of a nightmare. I want the human spirit to prevail. I want it to be that we are the ones that are in control of our own world and that it's the creative human spirit. Our minds are not computers. Our minds are not machines. There have been many, many very interesting cognitive scientists who follow that same line of thought, who show the incredible differences between our thinking process and what a computer can do. And so I'm a great believer in the human spirit and how it can never be replicated by bits, by digitalized or anything. AI is incredibly potentially powerful, but like Paul Graham, I see its limits.
Let's pivot to another idea here, and that's on the idea of regret. Your life journey has undoubtedly been with ups and downs, and I'm sure that there's so much more we can extract from your story, being you're someone I and many others look up to. So what does regret mean to you? Do you have any regrets specifically, or do you believe everything happens for a reason?
Well, I'm a great believer in the famous song of Edith Piaf, Moi, je ne regrette rien. Me, I don't regret anything. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but what I'm saying is, in looking back on my path, everything seemed to work for a reason. There were times when I was despairing, when I was very depressed, where I thought, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Maybe I should give up. I don't even know if I have a future. I'm talking about before I wrote the 48 Laws of Power when I was in my mid-30s. But in retrospect, every decision that I made ended up being the correct decision. There was a certain logic to it. So fumbling around and trying 50 different jobs and never really sticking with one taught me an incredible amount about power, about all the power games out there. It made me realize that I hate working for other people, that I hate having jobs, that I really prefer to work for myself, et cetera, et cetera. Working first in journalism and then trying to write a novel when I was living in Europe, and then working in Hollywood. These were all dead ends that didn't satisfy me. But in the process, I learned all these different kinds of writing skills, how to write according to a deadline, how to write things that are sharp and to the point, how to make things dramatic. I learned how to research in working in Hollywood, in working in journalism. I developed all of these skills. I became very observant of other people, so that when the opportunity arose to write the 48 Laws of Power, I was perfectly positioned to succeed in that. So I had my 20s were a period of wandering, of being lost, which I think a lot of young people might relate to, you know. But the difference is, and what's important, the reason I don't regret any of that is, and where some people may have a different experience than me, is I never lost sight of what I really wanted to do. I never totally gave up. I knew I wanted to write. I couldn't figure out what it was I was meant to write, what form, what medium I was meant to succeed in. But I kept trying. I never gave up. I was like this ant climbing up a hill. I would fall down and I kept climbing and climbing. I was persistent and relentless. And I took a shitload of criticism from people. I had an editor in journalism when I was 25 years old who took me to lunch and said, "Robert, you have no future as a writer. You're not disciplined enough. Maybe you should go to law school," etc. And I didn't listen to these people. I kept at it. And so, you know, I don't regret anything in there. Everything was for a purpose. And it comes into a philosophy that I call amor fati, that I have in my books, which means love of fate, which means look at everything that happens to you as serving some kind of purpose. So if you have a negative experience in life, let's say you have a job that you hated and you were fired, there are two ways of approaching it. There's the way of, oh, damn, I'm so depressed. Oh, look at me. I'm the victim. How horrible. Oh, God, what an awful boss, blah, 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 blah. Or the other way to look at it is, that was an interesting experience. Now I know I never want to repeat that. What did I do wrong that made me fired? Or what was it about this particular boss that makes him so awful? What is it about people I can learn? What is it about myself I can learn? If you have that mentality, then every experience that you have in life is a learning experience. And you look at it through the prism of, what can I get out of it? How can I use it to make me, to advance myself? You know, what can I learn from it? How can I profit from it? If that's your attitude, you can regret nothing, you know? And I mean, the ultimate thing is, about a little over a year and a half ago, I suffered a stroke that has completely overturned my life and made me ruin so many aspects of things that I used to love and appreciate. And yes, I could perhaps regret that. I could say, damn, if that hadn't happened. But there's also things that I've learned and developed from that. I've learned to be patient. I've learned that I have to slow down. I've learned, you know, that I'm not afraid of death anymore, because I came a hair's, you know, a quarter of an inch away from dying. So I'm not afraid of dying. And that's a very liberating feeling. It has taught me a lot. So even that I don't regret. So it's just a philosophy of life that I think is very important, that you are going to extract meaning and profit from no matter what happens to you. And nothing is worth regretting.
Everything you just said there is priceless, and I believe everyone listening should focus on and work on internalizing those perspectives. And as you continue to enlighten us and immerse us in your works, I think that people's human nature will continue to shift, and your content will continue to shape society for the better. You're truly one of a kind.
Well, thank you very much, Oliver. I really appreciate that.
So in closing, where can everyone connect with you, and which book would you recommend if you were to suggest one book for people to dive into first?
Well, as I said, it really depends on where you are. I really recommend, if you're at the age of 22 or younger, or in that vicinity, I really recommend reading Mastery. I think that could have the most important effect upon you in your future. it could really change how you look at the world. That would be definitely the first book. But if you're further along in life and you're dealing with problems with people, I would say turn to the 48 Laws and the Laws of Human Nature. Choose whichever one you want, but both of them would be very important. And if you're in a business and you're dealing with all kinds of competitors and rivals and it's very tricky out there, I would go to the 33 Strategies of War. If you're someone that's dealing with a lot of fear in life and your fears are holding you back and you want a short book that'll inspire you, I say the 50th Law. And if your main interest is in women or men and you want to have a relationship and you're having a lot of problems in that area, I would definitely begin with The Art of Seduction. I've just gone through all of my books here in a shameless bit of self-promotion, but that's sort of where it goes. As far as reaching me, I have an old website that's still up there. It's called Power, Seduction, and War. The and is spelled out, powerseductionandwar.com. And there you'll have links to all my other books, to my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook accounts. And there's even an address where you can email me. Just keep in mind that I'm very busy right now and that I'm also still dealing with the effects of my stroke, so I can't type very well. So if you don't hear from me, please, or it takes me a while, please don't hate me. It's just that maybe eventually I'll get to it. But I do encourage people to write and tell me their reaction to my books, etc. So that would be it.
Wonderful. Again, I appreciate your time. It means a lot to us. And we look forward to seeing how the world unfolds with more of Robert Greene's works in the future.
Well, thank you very much, Oliver. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in to Access TV's Unlock the Minds podcast. Before you go, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you may be listening on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. And engage with us on Instagram at access.tv.